I want to just remind everybody of what the problem is. Why are you even involved with water?
Well, water is taken for granted in the United States. We open the faucet, the water pours, we flush the toilet, the water goes away. And we don't give it much further thought. But when we first got into the water industry, we learned an amazing fact, which is that our national infrastructure is falling apart. And when it comes to infrastructure, we are a third world country and
Mm.
it's starting to show up all over the country. And people just start noticing if it's not happening to them. Oh, Flint. Yeah, that was terrible, but that's not me. And Compton, that was terrible. That's not me. But the fact is that the American Society of Civil Engineers has predicted that just 5 years from now, we will be in the red each year by $435 billion unmet expenses each year, almost half $500 billion, and nobody has figured out how to meet it. So
And
that
this
is the known issue.
that's just in water infrastructure.
Exactly.
American Society of Civil Engineers, who knew such a thing existed, who make sure that a lot of things run, I'm sure, or and those civil engineers are looking at the water infrastructure and saying that in 5 years, every year the United States will be in a deficit of how much?
$435 billion each year by 2029.
And what's the way to, can we put money in the bank to save it? Or what's that
Well,
just
no,
sounds
here's
like,
the
what
problem.
the heck?
The problem is federal funding has collapsed for water. The utilities are trying to charge people more, but that's only creating defaults. So literally, people are being reduced to bottled water when they need the water the most. And now these need to do unfunded mandates. You've heard about forever chemicals, right? Forever
Right.
chemicals are very important. And the EPA said we got to stop them. And they provided for all 150,000 water systems in America, they provided a grand total of $5 billion to deal with it. In other words, nothing.
Mm.
So unfunded mandates. And part of the problem is that we thought it was going to be 100 or 200 billion, just 100 billion. What's that? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
But now it's much more because of the effects of climate change. So we have a lot more sewer overflows, saltwater intrusion, a number of things happening structurally that we're not built for. And so there's really no better answer. If you have too many people riding a horse, the answer is not to get a bigger horse. The answer is to get people off the horse,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing is 90% of all water demand is by industry and agriculture. So they are the ones who are really creating the problem. And we have a solution, which is let them do their own. And what they're actually delighted to do it, because there's many reasons why, they're delighted to do it. And this takes them off the grid. And now the central municipal system can operate to serve the people. In Ireland, water's free. Well, why wouldn't it be free here? Well, it's because all the freaking industrials are clogging up the system. So get them off the system now.
In Ireland, is the or do they do the system differently? Are they using a system more like this one?
Fresh
Or
water.
water no, yes.
Fresh water is free in Ireland.
Yeah, I get it. And we say it's not free in the United States because agriculture and industry uses so much of it, and there's just all this infrastructure that we need. Obviously,
Well,
infrastructure is needed everywhere for water. How is Ireland able to do it for free compared to the United States? Let me ask that.
question of degree, right? We're not talking about how much water is being used. We're talking about the amount of toxic water being generated. We are very good at generating toxic water, right? I have been in Europe. I was at a resort in Italy a few years ago, and it was a volcanic crater with a lake, Lago di Balsano. And the lake was crystal pure. You could drink the water. And yet, all around that lake, there were farms. In America, that lake would have been green with algae.
Mhm, mhm.
In Europe, they didn't let those fertilizers get into that lake. So they're just more careful. That's just the
Okay.
way it is.
And I know somebody heard more highly regulated, which of course is bad terms in the United States, but when it comes to water, we need some regulation, it sounds like. And we need answers to problems. So we talked about you got a bunch of people on a horse. One of the answers could be get a bigger horse, which sounds like a much more expensive issue. What's the easiest way to do it is get some people off the horse. Give people another way to ride
Or walk.
or to get where they wanna go. Exactly. Here's how you can do this. Okay. I was looking at some stats on your website, and water rates have increased 80% from 2010 to 2019, 4.5 times or 4.25 times faster than inflation. I don't think people think about this. We just pay for our water, and we pay for the water coming into our house. We pay for the water that we drink, which people don't want to drink the water coming out of the faucet because of all the reasons we don't want to drink the water coming out of our faucet. 105 million Americans actually have unsafe water. And we don't even think about how water and the chemicals in water get absorbed into our skin from our showers, from our baths. We don't think about that. We just think about what we put in our mouths. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. You guys have come up with a solution.
Very
Let's
simple.
talk about that.
Solution is decentralization. In other words, take all right now, industry and agriculture are dumping their effluent into the city system. Why? Because they can, right? Now we say, okay, but here's the problem. They're now being sued for those effluents because the cities aren't doing a good job of cleaning them up. And so the originating industry still gets in trouble. So they still get blamed. So might as well, if you're going to get blamed, might as well do it yourself, right? And so we take them off the grid. It gives them three benefits. The first one is that they get lower water rates, right? Water rate inflation, water and sewage rate inflation is rising faster than college tuition or health costs, right?
Mm.
It's by far the fastest growing. People don't, it's not on any charts, but that's where it is. So
I want you to say that again, please, because I missed it. I had to come back, go back in my mind. And what did he just? Let's just say
water
it
and
out loud one more
sewage,
time.
water rate and sewage rate inflation is occurring faster than college tuition or healthcare costs,
Okay.
which is already the top, the worst.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
nobody
Okay.
mentions this, right? This is
Not
this.
sexy, but we got to have water. We got to have water. There's no way around it.
Well, apparently people think that somebody will figure it out. Well, we are. That's the good. So this is our solution. When industry does their own, they get their own water system. Now it's subject to regular inflation of parts and services, right? It's not ridiculous. And secondly, they can, if you're treating your own water, you can reuse your own water, which reduces your incoming costs and increases availability of fresh water. And the third one is that you're not involved in city politics. As long as you meet the permit requirements, you're like, I'm good. You guys do your thing. We meet the permit requirements. Those three reasons, probably the third one, actually, I'm being told, are paramount for a lot of companies because they don't want to be part of that mess that's going on. And so since 2016, when I got excited about this, we have been pursuing this angle, and we have built two companies, one of which it handles the very, very large customers, power plants and so forth, one big client at a time kind of thing. And the
Mhm.
other is these modular assembly line systems that drop into smaller sites. And between them, they're doing a great job. They're growing fast. There's a lot of demand. But that is not the end of what we've done, but it is the first major, major milestone is decentralization.
I want to just make this picture a little clearer. There's a couple things in my head. Make it a little more clear, but also I think I read somewhere where water companies are actually refusing to take the water from some of these companies because of how dirty it is and they can't clean it, or what are they rejecting?
Or there's too much. There was a brewery in the East Bay of San Francisco that literally the city was saying, no, you got too much effluent, and they were being forced to truck it to another county, right? So they just went and got their own system. They went off the grid. Done.
Okay.
It's over.
Okay. So just to get a full picture of the full cycle of the water, water comes from the city into your house or your building, your thing. And if it's my house, when I flush the toilet, turn on the shower, the water goes down the drain and goes back into the sewage system, which goes back to the city for treatment. And then the whole thing, it does all the stuff it's supposed to do. Is that right?
Correct. So what we are talking about here is, first of all, the water. We're not saying replace the incoming water. Let it continue to come from the city. They do a fine job of that.
Yeah.
Plus, they have all these contracts, et cetera. So let it be. But now, once we have it, we want to return. We want to treat the water, and either we sprinkle, we use it for irrigation, or we return it to the city treated, or we recycle. Then we do all those things, and these are all beneficial outcomes. And in fact, what we've calculated is that if right now America only recycles less than 1% of its water, if industry and agriculture recycled 15% of their water, we
One
believe
five,
one
one
five,
five percent.
we believe that freshwater supplies would double in America. That's
Recycling 15%. could lead to an increase of fresh water in the United States of 50%.
100% doubling.
Double it. I'm sorry, 100% increase. Okay. Okay. And
So
then we're talking industry and agriculture. We're not talking mom and pop in their house on Main Street. You're
oh,
talking
yeah,
big.
because we can deal with those, but it's not a priority. They're only 10% of the problem. So you always go for the worst. Like you've got a sprained ankle, but you got a migraine headache. You're going to deal with your migraine headache first. I'm sorry. Your sprained ankle is going to have to wait. So that's what this is about is what's the priority? The priority is the big users. And they're the ones that make the big difference. And they're also the source of all the worst toxins that are creating all the bad water in America. So we solve a number of issues at one shot by having them do it themselves. And that's what's so exciting about this. And it's creating a whole new industry because it's like when AT&T broke up, it used to be all centralized and you had those Princess phones and so forth. You're
Yeah.
too young to remember. But
I remember Princess phones actually.
you know, and then they had no internet, nothing. Well, AT&T got broken up and it created all the Ma Bells and so forth, but it also created the internet, MCI. It's a totally different game. So what happens is when markets are broken up or decentralized, they explode in value, right? Take mainframes. Mainframes were a particular market, and I'm old enough to remember having to book time on the mainframe to get my time on it, right?
Okay.
It was very efficient for the mainframe, very inefficient for the user. Then what happened was PCs. So we flipped it around and now it's very inefficient for the PC, which just sits there most of the day doing nothing, waiting for you. But it's very efficient for me, the user, because when I need it, I got it.
Yeah.
And it's also a vastly larger market than mainframes alone.
Yes. Yes. Now continue that into the water. 'Cause I think I lost something there.
Yeah, well, connecting it to the water, we have the central municipal utilities. They're like, we'll take care of everything. We'll do it all. We're all good. And so all the water companies are servicing the central utilities, but now it's breaking up into small systems all over the place. Now it's the rise of the local water company that is increasingly doing smaller systems, downscale systems, of which there are many, many more, right?
Mm.
If I have one giant central system or 100 smaller systems, the 100 smallest systems cost more than the one giant system just because of the efficiencies of scale, right?
Mhm.
But it's more responsive. So it's a bigger market, there's more activity, and you might argue there's more compliance because these industries are being held to their own standards. Not only that, it's less vulnerable to cyber attacks because, again, it's been distributed. It's not these giant central systems. So
Mhm.
there's all kinds of reasons why industry and agriculture should do its own water treatment. That's well established. It's already a giant trend. It's happening very, very fast. There's already a unicorn in the space called Gradient, they do the giant big pharma ones. We focus more on the everyday user, the brewery, the trailer park, RV campgrounds, garden variety users, housing developments that are all over the place. And so our job is to make it box stock simple. Here's our pod. It's got everything. We bring it out on a semi. We drop it onto a pad, plug it in just like you plug in your RV, and you're up and running. That is a revolution in water.
Huh. Okay. I was gonna want to talk about the competition in this space, and you started talking about that in that this big company unicorn in the group that's working with bigger organizations, probably the municipalities actually to help them take care of their water.
No, they're
What?
working with the private companies,
Okay.
the public companies. They're working with the end users. They're not focused on municipalities. The municipalities have lots of help. They just don't have money, right? So increasingly, they have no more money. So these companies, Gradient has gone to the actual PepsiCos of the world, food and beverage, big pharma, big chips, energy, all these big users say, we got a system for you.
Okay.
Now, these are $20 million systems, right? And the end user has the money. We're dealing with a different market, which is number one, they need small, they need quick, they don't have expertise on site, they don't have the dedicated water expert. So they need simple and self running. So it's a special requirement. And the second problem, which I'll bring up in a second, is they don't have money. And that's
Mm.
the second problem we solve.
So a company, I want to start my company. I want to start a brewery in San Francisco since you brought that up. Actually, I'm in Oklahoma. Let's start a brewery in Oklahoma, just north of Texas. where I know there's a lot you guys got a lot of stuff going on in Texas, right up the middle of the country here, and my water supply company said they say, "No, we're not taking that, you gotta deal with that." So now I have all my business costs, now I just got tossed in, "Oh god, what am I gonna do?" I know this brewery out in San Francisco, they had to truck their stuff to somewhere. How are we gonna pay for this? How are we gonna put this into our model and still make money? How does that work with Origin Clear and Water on Demand?
Right. So until recently, all you could do was just suffer the consequences, find the $500,000 somewhere, and just do it. And we have a case where we helped a company, a trailer park, and this actually was in the news, the Neville Home Park, where the owner, she was faced with the trailer park being shut down because of violations. So she ended up, in order to get our system, she had to give away half of the equity in the mobile home park, but she was safe. She had 50% of something as opposed to 100% of nothing, right?
Right,
Okay.
right, right.
Now, since then, we've come up with the next thing, which is, ma'am, you don't have to worry about that. Just sign here and you get your system. It's our machine. It's a long-term contract. It's a lot like these solar deals. It's a long-term contract, and you just pay a monthly fee that's based on consumption, and it's on your operating expenses, and that's the end of that. So we call that water on demand. And the real question is, because anything that's monthly recurring revenue is far more profitable than a single sale.
Mhm,
We've
mhm.
calculated, for example, that a 20-year contract of our system would return the original net profit from the original sale plus 19 times that sale over those 20 years.
'Kay.
So the original plus 19 times. So that's just initial. It may reduce a little bit in the end, but it's multiples. Okay.
Yeah,
So why wouldn't everyone do it? Right? Well, I like to say there's a wonderful thing called the anti-gravity chair. We have the chair. Where's the anti-gravity?
yeah.
In other words, I'm a water company and I want to help this poor mobile home park, and I want to give them a system and a 20-year contract. Where do I find the capital to pay for that? If they
Yeah.
don't pay for it, who's going to pay? And as a result, this new space, which is called water as a service, is booming. It's happening, but it's all big players. It's private equity and big water. Now, regular water companies don't get to play because they don't have capital. But we figured out a solution, which is that we set it up so ordinary investors like you could invest and have a piece of those water systems, a lot like investing in an oil well, right? You get a royalty on the oil well's production. So you have a basket of these properties and it's operated for these profits. And from that, you get profits, and then the royalty is shared with the investors. Plus, they get a wonderful deal with shares and this, that. It's a very nice deal because it's so early. Okay. But the bottom line is that we found a way, and we're the only people who've done this. We found a way for us, the ordinary water company, to fund these things from ordinary investors. And that is our superpower.
The other companies, I think I read other companies that are in the same space are using venture capital, getting money from bigger money so that average Janes and Joes don't have that kind of cash to put into a thing. Is that right? Because they're not doing the service that the financing over time or the use over time. Is that the difference?
Well, you got to come up with the money. And usually the client has no borrowing ability. They've got their SBA loans, they got this, they got that. They're maxed out typically. So they're like, no, I can't do $500,000. So they can't, you say, do a lease. Well, they can't even do a lease. So
Mhm.
this is a rent to center model. This is okay. We'll give you the machine, it remains ours. If you stop paying, we'll take it back. This is why it's so cool that these are pods that you can go by, and we have a right of way in the contract. We have a right of way to go pick up that machine and take it away if you don't pay. Right. So we do repo man for water systems is what we do. Right.
Okay. But this isn't a cost. I just want people to make sure people understand this isn't a cost above and beyond what that company would have had to pay if they were just on a regular water system, on the regular city system. Is that correct? Or they may have had to pay more based on inflation over time.
Okay. It starts out, I think, as a little bit more, but it inflates less.
Okay.
So over time, I believe that it works out far better. Time will tell. But here's the thing: less inflation. So that's important because they can program it. But secondly, remember that they're being sued now for these toxic effluents. So that removes that risk. Corporate America really cares about these things.
Mhm.
They want to mitigate risk. And thirdly, they can reduce the cost of incoming water if they recycle. So overall, it's a good deal. It's if you just said, well, right now, what I pay the city is $2,000 and you're saying 3,000 a month, let's say. That's more. Yeah, but the 2,000 is going to be 4,000 in 5 years, while we will only be 3,250.
Yeah,
That's
got
the
it.
difference.
Got it, got it, got it, got it. So we have long-term contracts with the majority user of the water. What the and the investors have invested the money that allows this rent-a-center model to function, and investors now own pieces of hard asset, that being the pod and the equipment in the pod?
Right. So they have a lien right to enforce royalties. That's what they
Mhm,
have. So that's built into their subscription agreement. So they, as Felicia, we've made it very, very attractive, well beyond the profit share. Again, because it's so early, right? People are, if you're a risk taker, you're early on. And so we give a very large stock grant in the company, OriginClear, but also in the new one, Watt on Demand, and also what's called warrants, which is options to buy more. It's
mhm.
very, very generous. And then you get this royalty package over the 20 years, which eventually we'll figure out. We have a plan to deal with, hey, I don't want to wait 20 years. How do I cash out? We even had that, but that's future. Now I can say very, very little about what's happening, but the record shows that if you go to originclear.com and look through our announcements, we went ahead and went into a business combination. We created a company called Water on Demand, and we put all of our best stuff in there. Progressive Water, which does the big systems, Modular Water, which does the small pod ones, and this third one, which is the capital one, which is still in development. We put them all in Water on Demand, and then we put it into a merger, a bit what's called a business combination, with a blank check company. These are companies that their only purpose in life is to have a bunch of money to go buy companies with. And that process has been ongoing for a while, as you well know. And so that is right now, we are in the S4, means the merger registration. If you go to ticker symbol FRLA on the SEC site, you will see that there's been a series of S4 amendments and to keep, they come back and they say, well, what about this? What about that? They ask questions. And they've promised to be prompt, which is very unusual for the SEC. And so that's moving along. Obviously, we can't guarantee outcomes, but we're very confident that this is going well. It's taking vastly longer than I ever expected. But then again, I'm 72. It took me vastly longer to succeed at this game anyway. So what the heck, right? We're the 17-year overnight success, as you well know.
So what's your desired outcome with this business combination company? What's the point of all of that?
Point of all this is that OriginClear is a launch where we launch companies. This is what we do. So we just took everything we created over the last since 2015 and we shoved it into this new company and it's achieved a $32 million valuation, which is a good win. And now it's on the way. And assuming that goes right, we'll shuck and jive, we'll do broken field running, we'll figure it out, whatever. Fine. Now, Origin Clear, well, what do we do? Well, what's our superpower? We know how to raise money from ordinary investors. And so now we're creating the next hit, right? And so it starts with helping companies to raise their first money, and then which is a business unit we're calling Takeoff. That's the working name. And Takeoff takes companies and helps them out just with very, very simple funding requirements. And then the ones that are really stellar, we say, oh, we'll go ahead and select you to be accelerated by Origin Clear. We'll do all the NASDAQ stuff, blah, 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 blah. So we'll take you in hand. And so we have this process that starts with a very simple help you out kind of activity that obviously we charge a fee. And then from there, it goes to, well, let's be, let's do a venture together. And that's what I want to keep doing as long as I can, is just start doing this constant launch process, because I believe that Origin Clear will benefit tremendously from the fees they get, but also by having a piece of every one of these companies, as it will of Water on Demand. So it's the largest single shareholder of Water on Demand, and it will continue to be so for these other incubations. So over time, Origin Clear, remember that we've had a lot of investors that I owe a debt to, of an obligation to make something of the penny company, right? The penny stock company. It's stable. It's got a stable price. It's been there forever, but I don't think that being at 0.7 cents is a great way to be, right? But it's been stable and we can rise it over time with these launch activities if we start doing it well, which the first one is Water on Demand. As if it succeeds, then it's going to give us a tremendous amount of credibility. Like, hey, they got this deal done. Notch on the rifle, right?
Mhm.
And then the Mustang, they had the rising suns on their P-51s. They painted every single Jap that they shot down.
I don't
They
know this.
okay, these were fighters in World War II.
Okay.
Every time they shot down a Japanese opponent, they would paint a rising sun on the side of the cockpit.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Boom, 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 boom. So our first notch is what on demand, which gives us a tremendous amount of credibility, but we don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We want to
Right.
go to the next.
And so will OriginClear's company acquisitions, launches be about water, or are you going to expand into other things?
The service activity takeoff, as I mentioned it, is is not particularly focused on water. Whether we make the major things about water is to be determined. One of the main issues, Felicia, I will confess to you that water is one of the slowest moving spaces in the world. And if you saw hair, you'd see it's very, very gray. And it's just, I'm accustomed to moving much faster. So I'm
Mhm.
willing to have water deals. I think that water
Mhm.
space is going to be strong. But I
Mhm.
think that our investors will do well for us to have a mix.
And investors investing in OriginClear and in these. Well, if they invest in OriginClear, they are obviously investing in these other companies that come in. Or can people come in and invest in water on demand by itself, or some other company that comes down the pike?
They automatically have a percentage of whatever we create. That's part of the, like, for example, the percentage Origin Clear has of water on demand is owned by all the shareholders. Same thing for all of the deals that we bring in. Fine. But then we have the individual deals, which people may want to join in on at some point. Why not? And we have a concept we call Sky Lounge. Sky Lounge is, and you realize these ideas happened while we were all flying around this week. Takeoff and runway and Sky Lounge. Anyway, Sky Lounge is this idea of a community of investors who get presented deals, Origin Clear sponsored deals. So ones that we vetted, that we think are worthwhile, et cetera. And then they get an opportunity to jump in. So that's to come. It's very exciting. I think you've heard of Y Combinator. They do a lot of the VC deals. They
Mhm.
were beyond an Airbnb, for example. But that's VC. What about regular investors? You and me, we have a terrible time accessing good deals. We really do.
Yeah.
And so it's time to take care of the regular investor. And that's our mission.
So I know that there's the side for accredited investors, people making over, I think it's 250 or at least $1 million net worth. And then you have a non-accredited investor investment also. Is that correct?
Correct. So we do dual offerings. We have a crowdfunder, which is anybody can invest up to 10% of their annual income or 10% of their net worth in 1 year. And minimum is 250 bucks. And that works great.
Hmm.
And then we have the credit investor offering, which is for people making $200,000 or more, or if they have a significant other in the house, it's 300,000, or as you say, the $1 million net worth, not including your primary residence. So obviously, that excludes a lot of people, which is why we like doing the crowdfunding so that
Hmm.
everybody is served. It is all discussed. If you go to originclear.com, click on the Invest Now green button, it'll tell you the options.
Perfect. Perfect. So you hopefully you didn't turn off a long time ago because you thought this was just for people who have a lot of money or make a lot of money or call that accredited investor thing. No, this is an investment for everyone. There is a place for everyone at the table on this investment. And again, as I said, I've invested in Origin Clear quite some time ago, and it just keeps getting better as far as what they're doing, how they're doing it, the folks that are involved. It's all really good. So originclear.com is where you go.